first, to the lucky person who has that get out of jail free card, make sure you read the fine print, okay? It says you have to make bail, right? You have to go through the process through the Hillamore's office, and then you get out of jail, okay? So we want to make sure that we do things the right way. Good afternoon. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. You know, I've been blessed with an opportunity to lead an organization, a great organization with a deep history. And, you know, the women and men of the police department are truly public servants. I've learned that in my short time being here. That's why it was important for me to understand that coming in, I was viewed as an outsider. And it was important to build a leadership team around me. So I want to recognize one of my deputy chiefs who's here, Deputy Chief McCorner. Would you just take a stand? Because I know Hilla likes to mess with him, but you know, it's important because I am trying to achieve what he has, and that's the respect and trust of the men and women of the police department. So I'm trying to build on that. And I think we're moving forward in a positive direction. But what a key opportunity we have here at the Baton Rouge Police Department at a difficult time and moment in policing. Law enforcement is at a critical juncture in America. And like most agencies, the Baton Rouge Police Department must follow the path that our citizens are demanding. There's been well-publicized egregious strategies that have painted police in a bad light nationally. But what we plan to do is we intend to leverage the present landscape as a platform to improve the department's internal culture and reinforce our relationship with the community and the law enforcement agencies in the Baton Rouge area. I have realized in the short time that my responsibility as your new chief is not only to work with our mayor and the city council and the legislators on legislative matters and policies related to policing, but is also to shape culture, to change attitudes towards the community and how they see our law enforcement officers, but also how our police officers feel about and appreciate the communities that they serve. We know that the majority of the community respect and love our law enforcement officers. We know that. That is a fact. But we also recognize that there are parts of our community that have an unfavorable opinion of our police department. And the areas that we must improve on in community police relations are the areas in the city where we have the most violent crime. It's important for us to build those relationships and tear down those barriers. In 2017, as Hilla stated earlier, we had too many homicides. Unacceptable. We cannot have another 2017. Of the 89 homicides last year, we only closed 47%. 47%. That is below the national average. If we are going to improve on these numbers, then we must improve on community police relations in those areas. We need the community's help in solving these crimes. We cannot do it alone. We can't. It is important to my staff and I that we continue to raise awareness on this issue of community police relations. We will listen to learn from key audiences and engage in meaningful conversations to improve community police relations, but also to restore trust and legitimacy in identified areas, and to recognize a reduction in violent crime in the city of Baton Rouge. And we believe we can do that if we are intentional and strategic in everything we do as we move forward. At the Baton Rouge Police Department, we have begun to instill principled performance and community service and integrity. And then we're going to sustain that as part of an organizational transformation based on deep and abiding adherence to 5 principles, 5 core principles. And these principles we talk about. We talk with every man and woman who wears this uniform. And we're going to be transparent and fair. If you do the right thing, who cares who's watching? That's how we feel. And I think our mayor shows she supports that by issuing these new body cameras. And I tell you, they work. They work. We catch police officers every day doing the right thing. Doing the right thing. But we've also witnessed a few who don't deserve to wear this badge. And we are going to do what we need to do to make sure that those officers who are not behaving in the way that we believe consider other careers. Community engagement and collaboration is the third. The fourth is going to be a focus on data and facts. And the fifth, the creation of a shared desire for organizational transformation. By the end of next week, we would have had discussions with every person in the police department. And we talk about the importance of demonstrating those 5 core principles every day as we move forward as an organization. When we hear reform, that should not be negative. Reform only means change. And we should change because the community's expectation, how we do our job changes. And that's what progressive agencies do. We change with the times. Our objective is to help our police department reach several goals. First, we're going to increase trust and confidence and legitimacy in the eyes of our citizens. I talked about that earlier. We're going to rebuild internal trust within the Baton Rouge Police Department. We're going to constantly demonstrate a strong servant-focused police culture. We're going to improve morale through training, through supervision, through accountability, and through leadership. We're going to create a culture that is imperative for service and integrity in a department that dramatically reduces the frequency of problematic behavior and events that lead to potential crisis. We're going to build a citywide approach to accountability, transformation, transparency, and reform that reinvigorates our citizens' trust in the police department. We're going to work with our local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies in the greater Baton Rouge area to raise the bar for all law enforcement agencies. And we've already had those conversations with our partners. How can we do better? How can we combine resources to be more effective and help each other out? We've had those discussions with Hiller, with the sheriff, with state police. And we're going to advance BRPD implementation of a community policing program designed to build trust. We're going to develop technology and tools that help BRPD become an agency that others look to for leadership and best practices. That's our goal. And we have begun this process to achieve those goals with a high-level 6-point strategy. The first I mentioned a little bit was improving community police relations. You know, the mayor's call to action, which she started along with other community engagement events, provides a platform where law enforcement and community partners can work collaboratively on crime-related issues. We're going to build a healthy relationship with the community because it's essential in not only crime prevention, but in solving crimes. We have begun the process of creating a community policing plan inclusive of all districts in the police department. We are also looking at how we train and who's doing the training. It's important. We are conducting an assessment And we are looking at models that place a great emphasis on discretion and common sense practices to law enforcement, particularly when it comes to enforcement. We cannot arrest our way out of this problem. Every study shows that. We're going to create a mission-focused organization to reduce crime. We've started that. We recognize that a small group of people are responsible for a majority of the crime. So we're going to spend our efforts using an intelligence-driven approach to identify and target that 7% that's responsible for the majority of the crime. We're going to work with our local, state, and federal partners. Right now, we have several different models that we're currently implementing. One is hotspot policing, where we're using our Peace Cop software that looks at crime data and imaging and helps us in our patrolling strategies by directing the resources at the appropriate times to those areas. We started that at the beginning of the year, and hopefully at the end of the summer, we're going to have all of our police officers trained in our Peace Cop. We have a violent crime reduction operation that began the second week in office. The first day I was appointed, Mac and I said we met at a restaurant, and we sat down, and we had a heart-to-heart conversation about those individuals, and we began an operation. Some of it has been leaked out to the media, and we saw y'all on one of those scenes, so we got some leaks. We got to work on that. But we're going to be talking about that sometime this week on our efforts since the beginning of the year. And even with those efforts, we're still at 13 homicides. And you're going to hear about that before the end of this week. We're also working with Hiller and our other agencies on some focused deterrent strategies, because focused deterrents work. It works. I know Brave had some negative publicity, but we're going to build on some of the successes that Brave had, and we're going to build a program that's bigger, stronger, that's more efficient, and we're going to rename it. We're going to rebrand it. And we've started that process. We're going to cultivate integrity and accountability in the police department. It is imperative that we earn the public's trust outside the organization. First, by setting clear standards, and subsequently by building mechanisms to ensure that the standards are embedded in the fabric of our organization. This includes addressing policy, audits, inspections, consistency with discipline, principles of progressive discipline to ensure administrative integrity throughout the police department. We're creating a plan for technology and equipment improvements. Data should drive everything we do. We have begun a review of our technology needs. We've targeted improvements that will help create efficiency more effectively and allow us to deploy and monitor work and bring the organization in line with best practices in policing among peer agencies across the country. We are gaining support to create a Baton Rouge Crime Watch Center, where we will have our crime cameras, our automated license plate readers, our shot spotters, and other law enforcement tools that will help coordinate our investigative efforts. Our current 119 crime cameras and 9 mobile and portable license plate readers are unsatisfactory for a city our size. And I know Hiller has been working with the business community and others to help us get those numbers where they need to be when it comes to technology. And we're going to be working on that. But we also have to place more officers on the streets. Hiller talked about the shortage. You know, we have right around 700 police officers positions that we are allocated funding for. And we have 32 police officers in the academy right now. We're praying that every single one of them graduates, and we're going to have 35 starting at the right around summer, in mid-summer. So we're going to get those numbers up. We're also looking at administrative positions within the police department, and we're looking at what they do. do we need a police officer to do that function? So we are reassigning positions in priority areas to make sure that we have more police officers on the streets. And why I am here, which is the sixth. That's communicating effectively with key audiences. It is imperative that we continue to build dialogue within the department and with our external stakeholders. This will help in create an environment where inclusion and feedback is welcomed. Every voice matters. We want to hear, we care. We may not always agree with your recommendations, but we will at least consider it because you are a partner. Crime is a socio-economic issue. Crime is bigger than the police department. You know, for years, law enforcement has accepted the responsibility when it comes to crime. It's the burden of leadership. But the truth is, we get involved when other systems have failed. We don't like to talk about that. But Rotary, when our education system falls short, when our family values have diminished, when our faith-based community fails to reach the hearts of the lost, when our business community isn't willing to take risk in economically deprived communities, when we don't address the mental health crisis in America, when all of those institutions fail, they have an effect on crime. That's a fact. But every time there's an increase, from Baton Rouge to New Orleans to Shreveport, from New York to Seattle, it's guys around the country who wear the same hat that I wear. Everybody's looking at when there's an increase in crime. We need to start holding other institutions accountable. Right now, in law enforcement, we're dealing with the symptoms. We have to start addressing the cause. We cannot have a conversation about strategic plans without talking about the high school dropout rate for African American males. We can't. We can't talk about solutions without talking to community leaders and families about their responsibility on this issue of crime. We haven't considered all of our recommendations for change until we have conversations with our pastors about why we have more black men in jail than in church on Sundays. You can't reach the streets from the pulpit. We can't have a conversation about long-term crime reduction plans without talking to the business community about economic development in disinvested neighborhoods. We all play a issue. We all play a role in this issue called crime. We do. Rotary, our expectation is that our police officers, as we move forward, will be professional at all times, even when provoked. As we move forward, we will be professional in everything we do. We will be professional in our appearance. We will be professional in our demeanor. We will be professional in our processes, and we will be professional in the product we put out. That is where we are going as an organization. And as we strive to be a more professional organization, we are asking the community the people that we serve, to show our police officers the respect their positions deserve. And our officers will reciprocate that courtesy to everyone they come in contact with. On a daily basis, our officers have a great responsibility. And each call for service that we go on requires a specific set of skills, knowledge, and ability. It ranges from de-escalating a situation or just to effect an arrest, or to act as a social worker to resolve an issue involving a child, or to act as a marriage counselor during a domestic call for service, or to search a building, to chase a suspect, to investigate a burglary, or to act as a medic and render first aid. We ask a lot of our officers, because each one of those calls for services that I mentioned requires us to put on a different hat. Each one. Now, Rotary, I don't know what each and one of your day is like. I don't know. And I don't know how much money y'all make, but y'all a good-looking crowd, so I see money out there. I'm just saying. Right? I saw $1,000 shoes. Saw a couple of $1,000 suits. That's right. I watch The Devil Wears Prada, so I know style when I see it. Okay? I don't know that, but it's probably a little more than my police officers make. You know, last week, one of our officers began his shift with a call for service. His first call was a person involving a mental illness. That guardian mentality to go and help. That's what's talked about in the President's 21st Century Policing Model. His next call for service was an accident. He had to put that hat on. His next call for service was a suspicious person. He cleared that call. His next call for service was another accident on the interstate. Write the accident up. Our citizen went on his route. His next call for service was an assistance call, because some man decided to shoot at his mother and sister. And our hero responded to that call. And in responding to that call, he was shot in the face. And in an instant second, he went from this guardian to this warrior fighting for his life. I can't go into the specifics of that incident because it's an open investigation. But he went home that night. He's still suffering from his injuries and recovering. But he went home to his 3-month-old baby and the love of his life. I don't know what your day is like, Rotary, but that was the day of a Baton Rouge police officer. God bless you. Pray for our officers and pray for our community. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a few minutes, and the chief has agreed to accept a few questions. So, Reverend and Fred, if you'll pick up those microphones, you have to dash out to these people who have a question so that everybody can hear it and that we can get captured on the recording. So if you have a question, please. Barbara.
Would you care to comment on the report last night that there were 76 of those prisoners who were recently released who have been re-incarcerated?
No, I apologize. I did not read that story. You're speaking of 76 that were released due to prison reform?
Re-incarcerated.
It's 106. But, I don't have a comment on it. One thing that I did recognize is when we look at, we talk about our role as businesses. We have to do a better job of giving people second chances. We don't do a good job of giving second chances. You know who does? Family. Family don't give up. Family gives second chances, and our faith-based community gives second chances. There are programs out there, but I think we need to look at some of our programs that are out there that allow those who are being released to find their way back into to society, and we got to look at decent jobs. So I would have to look at the research. I'm sorry, but I have not researched that. I even read that article.
Chief.
Outstanding presentation. The question that came to mind with Hillary spoke to us about BRAVE before, but if we've lost that funding and some of the other technology-related issues you mentioned, how do we get the money to do that?
Well, we're looking at several options. There's some grant opportunities that we are exploring. We've talked to the mayor's office about some opportunities to help get it the foundation, the ground running again with that program. But there have been business community like yourselves who have expressed an interest to make some donations so we can get that focused deterrence strategy back in motion.
Got a question over here, Chief.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Salvation Army. We're centered on the north side. It's a tough place to live and work. I think everybody understands that. We have a community center that sits 100 yards from where a 14-year-old was gunned down and killed last week. And I will tell you, my staff is scared to death to come to work. And we've actually had to stop certain things that happen after dark because since the floods, the area has completely changed population.
Yep.
And I think you know that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to put the question out there, what are we all to do? Because we've tried to reach out to the new population and we're not having a lot of success, and we're concerned.
When it comes to North Baton Rouge, I know the mayor's office is involved in some economic development in that area. We specifically talked about that with our faith-based community, and we have pastors who have expressed an interest to make some investments in those areas. But what we're doing now is, with the resources that we have available, we are looking at data, and you're going to see more police officers on the street. We have so many ideas and recommendations for change, and I got to tell you, the recommendations are just as diverse as the people that we've spoken with. So we have the federal government coming in next week to help us organize some of those community recommendations. So you're going to see some programs being put in place in partnership with our faith-based communities and some other leaders, and some of them are specifically targeting North Baton Rouge.
We're part of that faith-based community and nobody's reached out to us to this point. So
Okay.
we'd like to be reached out to.
Absolutely. I know we met last week. How many? 120 pastors last week we met with. But yeah, we'll definitely get you on that list. And we met Friday before last, I believe. We had a prayer breakfast with about 120 members from the faith-based community. We'll definitely get you involved.
Chief, of the applicants going into training and knowing that police work is tough work and not particularly well paid, what are the motivations that bring most people into police work?
Well, we're stressing that it's a calling, because that's what it is. I mean, we didn't do this for the money. And that's what we try to encourage and instill. You know, we do have some of our younger generation that's just looking for a job, right? But this career, it's a calling. So we try to find ways in training to identify those values. And we've already lost about 3 already. It's a 22-week academy. So we've lost 3 officers already. And that's the whole purpose of that, academy process. You know, we start in the beginning in the recruiting process, expressing to the men and women what they're going to be looking at. It's not the money, but it's a calling, and those are the values that we look for.
Do we have the funds to get up to full manpower?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have the funds for the 700 positions. I think maybe 698 now. I've lost 2, but yes, sir. We do have the funding for the next academy class. So what's happening right now? We have 32 in the academy. We pray that all of them are going to make it, but statistics show us that they all won't make it based on prior academies. We have the 35 that are going to be starting. We probably move those numbers up based on some who don't make it. But we have police officers retiring. We have a lot of police officers that are retiring. So we are looking at what we call a post-academy, where we will hire police officers who are already post-certified and have more of a smaller version of academy, 6 to 8 weeks, so that we can get those officers on the street. The challenge with that is pay. You know, when we're competing with Louisiana State Police, Gonzales PD, and other local agencies that make more money than we make and don't necessarily deal with the level of stress that the Baton Rouge police officers deal with on a daily basis, it's hard to get those top recruits. So we have to continue exploring ways to raise the pay of our police officers.
I have time for one more question. Matthew.
So what is the solution to raise the Baton Rouge police officer pay? Because, I mean, I don't know if you can say how much they make, but it's a small fraction of what they're worth. So.
Yeah. So, y'all tax yourselves and we can give them a raise. We're looking for some outside the box thinking. No, so we are looking at a pay study right now. We're in the process of doing that. And we're going to put a study together, and because it's not just about the pay, we look at the whole benefits package. It's not necessarily about the pay, but it's the benefits. We know that our union, the Baton Rouge Union, is doing a pay study themselves. So we are in the process of doing that.